Joseph Goebbels was hailed as a genius, a master of words who could bend millions to his will. But the dark truth hidden in his own private diaries reveals something far more disturbing. It shows how his deep personal struggles, his sharp mind, and a twisted view of destiny forged an unbreakable loyalty to Hitler. This wasn't just clever politics, it was a horrifying descent into fanaticism that ended in a bunker. It's an ending that's hard to wrap your head around. Why would anyone stick by a leader so completely, especially when the whole world was crashing down around them? What made Goebbels so fanatically loyal, right up to the final second? The truth is, he told us himself, the clues are hidden in thousands of pages of his personal diaries, and when you look inside, you get a chilling, direct view into the mind of a man who was both brilliant and deeply broken. You see, this wasn't just about politics for him. It was a personal crusade, fueled by his own insecurities and a desperate need to believe in something or someone. He used his sharp mind to build Hitler into a kind of savior. And those private writings show us exactly how he convinced himself and millions of others to follow that myth to the very bitter end. To really get inside Goebbels' head, you have to start with his pain. From the day he was born, he had a deformed foot that made him walk with a limp his entire life. When World War I came, the German army took one look at him and said no. In a country where being a soldier was the ultimate measure of a man, that rejection was a deep, public humiliation. It left him feeling like a complete outcast. But on top of that, he was also a failure in the one area where he thought he could shine. He was incredibly smart and even earned a PhD in literature. He dreamed of being a famous novelist and playwright, but his work was rejected over and over again. He was left with a sharp mind, a big ego, and a bitter resentment for the high society cultural world that wouldn't let him in. So you have this man, simmering with shame and frustration. He felt physically weak and intellectually ignored. He was a man with big ambitions, but no place to put them. He was desperately searching for a cause, something big enough to make his own bitterness feel important. And then he found Adolf Hitler. Hitler didn't offer complicated arguments or intellectual debates. He offered certainty. He spoke with absolute conviction, promising a new destiny for Germany and for men like Goebbels. For someone drowning in self-doubt and failure, this was a lifeline. It was an emotional anchor that was far more powerful than any logical idea. Suddenly, Goebbels had found his purpose. If he couldn't be a war hero and he couldn't be a celebrated artist, he would become something else. He would channel all of his failed ambition into a new kind of art, a dark art. Joseph Goebbels kept extensive diaries written in real time throughout his rise and the collapse of Nazi Germany. They are intensely personal, and they reveal far more than ideology. The entries show a man obsessed with himself. Goebbels wrote repeatedly about his physical disability, his feelings of humiliation and exclusion, and his constant need for recognition and importance. Again and again, he framed his life not as a pursuit of success, but as a struggle for destiny. They also reveal an emotional dependency on Hitler that went far beyond political loyalty. Goebbels recorded private meetings in near reverential terms. Praise brought elation. Being ignored brought despair. Hitler appears in the diaries less as a politician and more as a source of meaning and validation. Most disturbing is how openly Goebbels discussed propaganda as manipulation. He wrote candidly about shaping public opinion, managing emotion rather than facts, and controlling tone, repetition, and timing. He did not describe propaganda as informing the public. He described it as directing perception. The diaries also show clear awareness of lying. Goebbels acknowledged exaggeration, distortion, and strategic falsehood, justifying them as necessary tools for morale, unity, and belief. Truth was treated as flexible. Effectiveness was the priority. His anti-Semitism appears without euphemism. Jews are portrayed as enemies of history. Violence is rationalized as defensive. Responsibility is shifted onto the victims themselves. The language reveals how ideology was used to make cruelty feel logical. As the war turned, the tone of the diaries changed. Early confidence gave way to desperation. Goebbels privately acknowledged military collapse even as public optimism intensified. The growing gap between what he knew and what he broadcast is one of the most disturbing aspects of the journals. Near the end, the diaries show acceptance of destruction. Goebbels justified total war, expressed willingness to sacrifice civilians, and accepted the possibility that Germany might be destroyed. Survival mattered less than ideological consistency. In the final entries, loyalty to Hitler remains absolute. Reality is fully rejected. Death is framed as resolution, not failure. There is no recorded regret. The diaries matter because they remove ambiguity. They show that propaganda was not confusion or loss of control. It was conscious, intentional, and believed, most of all, by the man who engineered it. Goebbels' method was terrifyingly simple. He wasn't interested in proving a point with facts or logic. He believed that if you tell a lie that's big enough, and you just keep repeating it, it becomes the truth. The goal wasn't to convince people's minds, it was to train their instincts. To do this, he needed total control. As the Minister of Propaganda, he seized every newspaper, every film studio, and every radio station. He made sure no other stories could ever reach the public. He created a media bubble where debate didn't exist. There was only the official story, played on a loop, until hearing it felt as normal as breathing. Take the event we now call Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass. This was a brutal, highly organized attack on Jewish people, their businesses, and their places of worship. It was state-sponsored terror. Kristallnacht marked the moment propaganda became violence. On the nights of 9 and 10 November 1938, coordinated attacks swept across Germany and Austria. Synagogues were burned, Jewish businesses destroyed, homes ransacked, and Jewish men arrested in large numbers. Police were ordered not to intervene. Firefighters protected surrounding buildings while allowing synagogues to burn. The regime claimed the violence was spontaneous public anger. It was not. Propaganda reframed organized terror as the will of the people. Years of conditioning had already stripped Jewish communities of sympathy and protection in the public mind. Goebbels' real project wasn't just controlling what people thought, it was controlling what they believed. His single biggest job was to take a man, Adolf Hitler, and turn him into a myth, a kind of god. At first, he wasn't sold on Hitler at all, but then something inside him snapped. He had what you can only describe as a conversion. He started to believe he was the chosen messenger, the one person who could explain Hitler's grand destiny to the world, and so he went to work, and he was brilliant at it. He painted Hitler not as a politician you could agree or disagree with, but as an inevitable force of nature and a savior to rescue Germany. This twisted belief system got cranked up to a terrifying new level when it was obvious Germany was losing the war. Goebbels knew it was hopeless, but instead of easing up on the propaganda, he did the exact opposite. He floored the gas pedal. His infamous total war propaganda was designed to do one thing: completely detach the German people from reality. He started selling their coming collapse not as a military defeat, but as a final glorious test of their spirit. And this thinking led directly to the final horrifying act in the Führerbunker. For Goebbels, the myth he had spent his life building could not be allowed to die a normal death. It couldn't survive contact with the real world. So when the end came, his choice to poison his own children and then take his own life wasn't just an act of desperation. In his mind, it was the only logical ending, the ultimate act of faith, a final, twisted sacrifice to the God that he himself had created. Goebbels' journey, from the deep pain of his childhood to his final, terrible act in the bunker, shows us the chilling power of a single, destructive belief. He twisted his own suffering and sharp mind to turn a man into a god, using propaganda to bend an entire nation to his will. In the end, his loyalty to this myth became his entire world, leading to a horrifying sacrifice that made no sense to anyone outside his warped reality.